When people talk in tension, when they're tense, stressed, they talk in bullet points. I got cut off. It was a guy that was looking like this. He was on his phone, blah, blah, blah. And they just talk in bullet points. Master listening in these fields means you're filling in the gaps. So when I was talking about that SWAT sergeant, I was asking him questions about his wife. I was asking him questions about, have you been there before? Has this happened before? What does it look like? Has she pressured you like this before? And I'm walking him through the system and just trying to understand, be curious. I'm not going to solve it for him. I'm filling in the bullet points, between the bullet points information.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to Life in Transition podcast. I'm very excited today to have with us Karleen Savage, who is the trailblazer in conflict resolution. And I really look forward to our time together today, Karleen. Most welcome to Life in Transition podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I am glad you are here. So jumping right in, Karleen, what would you consider to be your most important, your most transformational transition that you have been through in your life?
I think, and it still stands, I think that the most transformational event that I've had in my life is probably when I got my master's degree in conflict resolution and negotiations. It was just an epic. I mean, it sounds weird and sounds trite to say getting your degree, but it's not like people think. So
take us into some of that, because like you said, for a lot of people, it's not the first thing that comes up for them. So what was it that you learned, or what was it that made this experience for you so transformational, Karleen?
The events leading up to it is one thing. So there's that part. But really what made it transformational is because a lot of us were going into, so my cohort was only about probably 20 people. By the time it was all said and done, there were probably only 15 people in the whole master's program. And when we came into the program, the professors were asking, so why are you here? What do you want to do? And I was like this, what I felt was really a nobody. You had people that were heads of union. You had the head of the railroad, one of the largest railroads in the nation. You had an ER surgeon. You had a pediatric surgeon. You had like all these wow.
All these somebodies, right?
Right. And I sat there going, guy, why am I here? And as they were telling their story, I wasn't there for any of the reasons that they were there, which probably makes sense. But they were saying, I want to get the union to cooperate with X. I want to get my ER staff to be able to better respond. And so those were the stories they're sharing. And I was going, I want to learn what I don't know. Right. I want to understand that. And then it happened. And that's when I realized the biggest takeaway was you can be right and get it wrong. And that was a devastating blow for me, because a lot of us look at principle and logic and, you steal money from me, I'm going to be mad.
Right. Right.
You steal money from me, I'm going to expect you to pay it back. Things like that. You violate a trust, I'm going to doubt you, or I'm going to have a response. And what I realized is, yes, I can be right, but I could handle it so badly that it doesn't make me any better than the other person.
Right.
That is how conflict happens, is that when, at least one of the places, is that a lot of times we're thinking we're correct. And we're just trying to get everybody else to understand it,
right.
Whether it's a spouse or a coworker or your boss. And I'm just trying to get you to understand the principles that I'm trying to tell you, because you're wrong and I'm right. Or it's not fair, or it's not ethical, or whatever it is. And we can get it wrong.
So when you say get it wrong, tell me what you're talking about there. Like, is it the way you hold it? What is it that I agree with you completely? And by the way, being right doesn't make it right, so to speak, right? But what do you mean when you say get it wrong? So if you're in this conflict resolution, or maybe this isn't even about conflict resolution, it's just the aha that you had at the time that was so transformational for you.
It is, it's both of those. So if somebody takes money from me and they do it multiple times, and by the, fifth time, I'm starting to get ticked.
Sure.
And I'm starting to have a response, and and then I lay into the person. and say, how dare you? What do you think you're doing? What are you thinking?
Right.
Why do you think this is okay? Doesn't this sound like a lot of the lines we use when we're in arguments with
Sure.
people?
Yeah.
Why do you think this is okay? Who do you think you are?
Yeah. It's not
These are
right.
those,
Yeah. Why do you
right,
think you can take advantage of me? Right.
right. And so when you're doing that, it's equally as wrong.
And tell me more about that. Like, why is that equally as wrong?
Because in one way, if somebody steals money from me, in one way, that person is devaluing me, no respect. And if I start launching off at somebody, isn't that equal to that? Devaluing them and no respect.
Okay. Yeah.
So I realized, I could deliver my stuff pretty harshly, equally harsh.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I go back to the ancient book of wisdom, Ted Lasso, where he talked about, so much about being curious instead of critical. In one of the episodes, he said, if you were a little more curious and a little less critical, right, then you would have asked questions and understood and not made a fool of yourself, thinking it was at my expense. Right.
Right.
So I see that was the being critical of somebody else and putting them down, then devalues them the same way as they were devaluing you by doing something wrong toward you.
Right. And then you hold it and then you let it fester. And then you do the snowball effect where they come and ask or they try and restitution. And the thing is that it's a kind of a no-win situation if you're always thinking you can do that or you can't do that. And there is a breaking point, but that's the thing in conflict resolution that I learned is that there's a process to resolution. And it can work if you work the process. But I learned, and that kind of devastated me a little bit.
So why did that devastate you? Why was that so meaningful to you? You said in the preface that it wasn't, maybe for not everybody is getting this degree is really transformational, but this particular thing, when you realize there was a process and that being accurate or being on the correct side of the data doesn't necessarily make you better, it was really devastating. Why was it devastating to you? What chord did it strike?
Because my husband suffered a brain injury. Mm-hmm. At that time, I think it was about 25 years.
Mm-hmm. He had a brain injury for 25 years at that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So he suffered his brain injury in 94.
Okay.
1994. And when they didn't know what brain injuries were and they didn't understand it and they weren't passing out literature on soccer fields and, they didn't do all those checks. Right. And so he had suffered a brain injury, but we had no support. Mm-hmm. It took us 4 years to get him diagnosed. In the meantime, he was showing all the signs of a brain injury that we understand now.
Right.
When that happened, we decimated our marriage. We just leveled it. We went from Cinderella story to, what the is going on? And in that process, I was principally correct. He didn't have a memory. He couldn't remember stuff that he was doing. He would, yell at me that, I know how to do this. Don't tell me how to do it. And then he'd forget. Or he'd forget where I was, so he couldn't pick me up. Or he'd forget what he was going to get at the store and be gone 3 hours. He'd even forget how to get home. Just so many things. He forgot how many kids we had. So he'd go and pick them up, and he wouldn't pick them all up because he didn't know he had them. He, just all these things. And so because we didn't know
all
what
these
was happening,
horrible things, and you were right that his behavior was horrible, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, build it up. He watched our daughter drown. And he just stood there. She didn't drown because I was in a distance, but he stood there watching her. And we didn't know what was going on. So he's just staring at her. She's got her hand up above the water trying to reach somebody, and she can't. And finally, I yelled at him. So when I'm looking at, and he, yelled at him to pull her out, and it was just these kinds of things, running stoplights, running stop signs. We've got kids in the car, and I'm yelling, stop, and so you you pile those on top of, we had 6 kids at the time. I'm doing doctor's appointments. I'm trying to make sure everybody has a normal life. And then all these crazy things are happening to us. And so when I look at it, it's devastating. It devastated me. I was so on my mark. I was on top of everything. All the kids, doctor's appointments, grades, the civil service and church going and doing all the things that you do there. And so I came away, years later going, I am correct.
Right.
I am right. I am following the rules. And you're not cooperating.
Right. This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you are looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life. If you're facing challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. And you can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle Coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets. So you had this, say, fermenting inside you for 25 years at the time you were taking this class.
At the time that I went and got my master's.
Right, yeah.
It had been probably, 25 years. Okay. Anyway, but yeah.
So then it's understandable. Wow, this was a huge aha for you, because in the biggest and most personal, most important areas of your life, you were right, but it wasn't solving the conflict.
Yes. And so when I loved, so the change that happened to me was epic. And I realized, Karleen, you better back up and get in line with, and understand what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And so as I did, I learned these skills. And then I went into the court system. And because I had such a connection with them, it wasn't like I was trying to change my pediatric ER team. It was epic for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because I understood that, I had to back up and make the change. So I went into the court system. My results were exceptionally high in helping people to facilitate people through conflict. Mm. And I just loved the change that people could see, where it wasn't like mine, where it was this like slam in my face of, you are so wrong. Right. But you could actually ooze and soothe people through conflict. And when I saw that could happen, I went in and I got certified. I became a certified hostage negotiator. And then I loved the results there. I went and certified and became a crisis negotiator, and I worked the crisis lines. But then what happened is I saw these skills, and these fields have an enormous amount of success. So, and I mean, epic success. And so when I saw
what was
happening,
or in general, Karleen?
In general, so when you're looking at counseling versus these kinds of situations, counseling deals with behavior. For example, that's the closest that you might think of as a counselor. Counselors deal with behavior, what happened to get your behavior there, what you're going to do about your behavior, what causes, what provokes certain things. And crisis, hostage, and mediation deal with situations. Right. So we don't necessarily need to know your past. We need to just know how to walk you through
this situation, to get this situation handled.
Yeah. And deal with the focus and dialing in. And so when we were able to do that, I saw these certain skills rise to the top. And when I saw those skills rise to the top, I noticed I was using those skills all the time. And then I went, oh my gosh, wait a minute. It's not such a mystery. There really is a system of understanding this. And so that's why I kind of came out and put together my own stuff, my own curriculum, my own stuff to teach people how to do this. Because in hostage, you have a safety net. It's called a SWAT team.
Right.
In crisis, you have a safety net. It's called police and resource teams. In mediation, you have a support team. It's called other mediators and judges.
Right. To back you
up. But in
Yep.
personal life, in workplace, in civic duties, at church, you don't have a safety net. It's all you.
Right.
And so that was the big thing for me, as I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting it all wrong. And in addition to my husband's brain injury, we kept it secret from everyone for 14 years, including our 7 children.
Oh, wow.
Every friend, nobody knew he had a brain injury.
Wow.
And so then it pushed me into a different place. So by the time I did start my degree, is when I was kind of my back was against the wall. And it was like, I'm either going to lose this marriage completely.
Right.
And then I will stand on my perch
and be right
and say, I got it right. He's so wrong. Of course, he's done all these things. And everybody would look at me and go, yes, you're right. Like our good friends
they would
do.
justify it 100%. Yep.
Yep. And you're so worthy to do that. And you don't deserve something like that. And and I stopped and I thought to myself, what am I doing? Why does any of that matter? Because in the dead of night, there is nobody with you except you.
Right.
And so that's the only person that's going to be whispering in your ear in the dead of night. Your friends can say you don't deserve it, and your friends can say anything they want, but they're not going to be there in the dead of night.
So how did that change? Because this realization that you had, this transformation that you had in this conflict resolution classes as a master's, how did that change your approach to your marriage? Did you know already that he had a traumatic brain injury at that point?
Yeah, we did. Okay. But there were just no resources. The medical team said, he's got a brain injury. We don't know what to tell you. Okay. Good luck.
Good luck, right. So how did that change your approach once you understood that being right doesn't make you right, if I will. Right. Doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't make it right. And how did that change my approach?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that I saw the skills from mediation to hostage negotiations. I saw the skills, and I saw what I could do. So put me into a situation. I was in a hostage simulation where you get tested on how, do you understand the skills? Do you understand all this stuff? And I was in there with SWAT team and FBI, and I was simulating as a lead negotiator. So as a lead negotiator, you have a team, anywhere from 4 to 8 people. You have a team of people. So not one person is figuring it all out. Everybody is kind of feeding that hostage negotiator, the lead. And so I was in the lead position, and it was a simulation about this guy. And in that simulation, because I asked the right questions, and because this happens in crisis, mediation, and hostage, I asked the right questions. And when I asked the right questions and I made a statement to him, he said, forget it. Now we're in opposite rooms. Okay. This is a SWAT sergeant. Mm-hmm. And I went about my own, and I have now combined it with mediation skills, and I'm in a hostage simulation. And I said something to him, and he said, forget it. I give up. And it came out, because they're supposed to stick it to us hard.
Right, sure.
And he came out and he goes, I don't know how you did that. How did you do that? And the lead, the instructor said, you guys should listen to her. She's a mediator. And when I saw that reaction, now I did the same thing in court. I was able to where attorneys and sparring sides would end up making plans for a barbecue that weekend. Hey, let's get together. And I saw that response. So these are the things that made me go, okay, wait, this works. I need to apply this. And so I started applying it to my own situation. And as soon as I started applying my skills to my situation, epic change, epic shift.
So what did that look like when you say I started to apply it to my own situation? What did you do differently?
So I founded a trademark. It's called the Savage Theory of Resolution, and it's 5 skills used by these problem solvers. And the first one, you're going to love this, is curiosity. Mm-hmm. And the reason, now there's lots of curiosities, and I shared it in my TED Talk, but there's like a curiosity if you want to study art, all the, heritage of art. There's a curiosity if you want to get an advance in your work. There's a curiosity of how do I get out of this dinner party without hurting my friend's feelings? There's lots of curiosities. But the curiosity that is used with hostage, crisis, and mediation, it is the curiosity of exceptional learning. Mm-hmm. If you go into to learn how to paint, if you go into try and learn how to change a tire, are you going in going, you know what? They're not using the right tools. I need to show them how to use the right tools. And why are you using water-based paint versus oil-based? Don't you understand the toxicity of it? And are we going in like that when we want to learn something?
No, of course not.
Are we going in completely open, going, holy crap, what are we about to find out?
Right.
And that is the curiosity you take into conflicts.
So the curiosity without any preconceived notions, without any prejudice.
It's exceptional learning. Yeah. It's not just an active listening, which a lot of people talk about. It is exceptional learning. You become skilled in knowing how to learn with your hands off the wheel.
Right, right.
So take me into a hostage crisis or mediation room, and all of a sudden, I know how to learn.
Yeah, you're not faking it. You're not repeating the content, reflecting the feeling.
Right.
Right. You're actually being open to being influenced. Like, what is actually going on with this person?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, you got it.
Nice.
That's the most important key, is your ability to be an exceptional learner so that you can be curious, genuinely curious. The second one is your attitude. A lot of times when we're talking with each other, people come in and want to fix it. Oh, have you done this? You should do this. Or, the only way I see it working out is this. But hostage crisis and mediators, our attitude is, we're here to help. I'm here to serve. I'm all about it, and I'm all about you, but I'm not going to solve this. Mm-hmm. So again, hands off the wheels. We're not going to solve that. The third one is master listening. And I've coined this one as it's story mapping, but not like in corporate. Story mapping, when people talk in tension, when they're tense, stressed, they talk in bullet points. I got cut off. It was a guy that was looking like this. He was on his phone, blah, blah, blah. And they just talk in bullet points. Master listening in these fields means you're filling in the gaps. Mm. So when I was talking about that SWAT sergeant, I was asking him questions about his wife. I was asking him questions about, have you been there before? Has this happened before? What does it look like? Has she pressured you like this before? And I'm walking him through the system and just trying to understand, be curious. I'm not going to solve it for him. I'm filling in the bullet points, between the bullet points, information. The next one is fourth piece is connection. So it sounds like, or it seems like you came out of the house with a ton of pressure on you.
Right.
Sounds like this is an overload. Or it sounds like you've been here before. Mm-hmm. This stressed. And so it's the connection statements that connect your understanding with their situation from a 50,000 foot view. So what does it look like when you're looking at 50,000 feet? It looks like a scatter. You could say, it seems like it's just scattered for you. You're not sure where to go.
Right. So you're really building empathy for them and then sharing that with them.
And then they can go, yeah, you got it. That's it. And then you've made that connection.
Right. Yeah, once you've heard that response.
They'll correct it. Yes. And then the fifth one is reframing. And it's reframing, taking all that information. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn around and ask you. So that SWAT sergeant that I was doing simulation with, I said to him, it sounds like you were under an enormous amount of pressure. You weren't sure what to do. Is that right? Yes, that's right. But it sounds like you've been here before. Is that right? He says, yes, that's right. And in the simulation, he'd been to prison before, right? So I said, and it sounds like you've been to prison before. All connecting statements, right? And he said, yes, you're right. And I said, so here's my reframe. If your wife stood by you during those times, what makes you think she won't stand by you now? Mm. And he went, I give up. Right. He goes, I don't even know what to say. And then he came out. And because I had walked through the connection statements, the master listening, because I had done all those pieces, and you do them differently in mediation and in crisis, but I'm just showing you the hostage one. When you made all those connecting statements, when I made those gaps, when I filled in all the information, then it was easy to go to a reframe.
Right.
And then he said, well, yeah, why wouldn't she stick with me? We've been here before. She wasn't, I love her. She loves me. We've been here. So anyway, those are the 5 skills.
And did you apply those like that to your husband, or how did you work with your relationship?
Yeah, I started asking him because he would launch off. And so in his brain injury, he can he can get fire really quick. He sparks very fast and very high. So you're dealing with high conflict, toxicity, those kinds of things.
Your response is normally to mirror that, right? To come up with that as well. Yeah.
Right. And I do very well mirroring that. I want to make
you
that
have
clear.
Good skills in that space too. All right.
Yeah. And I was very good at that. And so what I started doing is going, when he would say something to me, I'd say, where is that coming from? Or he'd say, I told you this, I was doing this. And I'd say, okay, when did you tell me? And because it was a bullet point, so master listening, I'm curious. So it'd be, when did you tell me? I don't know, but I just told you. So he also, with brain injuries, there is like no way out sometimes. So I'd come back and go, I don't remember you telling me, but what was happening? Do you remember what was happening when you told me? Were we standing in the kitchen? Were we da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And he'd go, I don't know. And I'd say, okay, well, I don't know when you told me, but what would you like to do about it today?
Right.
Because I can't actually get that done today.
Right.
And so all of a sudden we went back into the what I told you earlier about situations. We went back into the situation and we said, okay, we're here now. Right. So what should we do?
How do we make the best of the here now instead of bitching about what happened before?
Right. And then you know, there's sometimes that you needed to vent and
we all have that, right? But how did that shift your guys' relationship? What happened in your relationship?
It can de-escalate him. It can de-escalate people very quickly. When you become learning and you become exceptional learners, then, I mean, we hear it all the time, the cliche, everybody loves talking about themselves. It's the same in conflict.
Right.
They really do want to tell you where they're coming from. They really do want you to get it. And what if we just slowed the pace and wanted to learn so we could get it? And that's what changed. I began to learn about him. We didn't, he didn't sign up for this marriage.
With that brain injury.
With that brain injury. And all he knows is that since that time. And so now, all of a sudden, I've got to learn about this person. And he's got to learn about me. Does he want to? Am I his cup of tea anymore? All of those things that goes, it's the womanly thing, part of me, But when I went into conflict, it was like, I need to learn about this.
Was that scary for you to think about? As bad as it was in your marriage, was it scary for you to think about that? Like, what if...
Terrifying.
Yeah, what if we might not keep going if we're go the way we are, but if I change, is that also going to blow it up even more?
Yeah, that's exactly. I was terrified, worried. I had 7 kids. We had kept it secret. They designated me as his person. So it's like, I had to make sure he was always okay. And what happens if I mess that up? And what happens if I start working and, I make money and, I'm at a job and something happens, or all of these things go through your head as you're trying to make those decisions. And so, it was a little terrifying. And I remember I had gone to a friend's for the weekend, and I was kind of in that place of going, am I getting divorced? And I went to her house, and while I was sitting there, she had a very tumultuous relationship, her husband wasn't even living there. And so I was staying there, and I heard her on the phone, and another moment of teaching, she said, she's on the phone and she goes, hey, Karleen's here. Would it be okay if she stayed for the weekend? And I thought, what? Why are you even asking him? He hasn't been here for years. Right. What's the deal? But then I listened to her, and she's going through, she's just going to be here for a couple of days, la, la, la. So she was talking about that. And I thought to myself, I have not given that much courtesy in all these years. I took over. I took charge. Right. I protected. I didn't give him courtesy. I just took care of it. And so I went home, and this is kind of going to that whole change. And I said, hey, can we go out to dinner? And he goes, sure. And he's like going, great, here we go.
Another lecture coming.
I know, I'm feeling it. And so we went to dinner, and I said, you know what? I said, you didn't sign up for this, and you have every right to walk away. And if we do, I'm okay with that. And I hope you are too. But I said, before you leave, I want you to know the woman in me. And I instantly changed. And I became his partner versus his caretaker. And when I did that, a lot of things I just stopped worrying about. It's not that they still didn't happen.
Right.
And it's not like in urgent situations, I didn't yell, but I took my hands off that wheel. And I thought, you know what? It's going to fall apart with or without my consent. And so as I did it, I was curious because suddenly I wanted to learn about this man. And so I would ask him questions, just questions. And it wasn't about anything specific or, a family issue. It was just questions. And then after about a week, he goes, oh my gosh, you're like the nicest woman I've ever known. I'm thinking, well, how much do you know? How many do you really know? But it didn't matter. He said, I cannot believe what a nice person you are. And I thought, ding, 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 Karleen, do you get it? Do you hear it? And so the thing is that regardless today of where the marriage is, where it goes, who escalates, how it escalates, I know how to bring it back.
Right.
By starting out with the question.
Right.
Whatever that question is.
Right. And being curious. And I love what you said too about, because in a marriage, we both have to caretake the other to some extent, but to not make that the primary role in either case and to be partners and only caretake when it's asked or needed.
Yeah, and I think for my case, and I think for there's quite a few marriages out there or relationships out there. In my case, it was not even expecting him to be my partner.
That's right. Yeah.
And letting him come to the table on his own on that.
Right.
And if I didn't like it, that was my choice not to like it. And it's my choice to make a move. And it's my choice. It's all my choice. And today, I have a very different view of relationships. I have a very different view of what holds it together. I've been married 36 years.
Congratulations. I think you're the first one on my podcast that's been married longer than me.
Okay. Yeah, but I have a very different view, and I tell people.
What's the most different about it? Like, what's the biggest change in the way you look at it today from what it was before you had this realization?
I don't put expectations on the relationship. I have my deal breakers. I have things that matter to me. I have vocalized those things. But after that, it's all his choice. And I don't put a guarantee. Like I used to think, if I do these things, it's all good, right? If he does these things, it's all good. If we both work together on this. No, I don't think majority of marriages work together. I think they both work in tandem and they're walking this way. They're not walking this way.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Midlife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes, you've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do, but you still feel like something's missing, like you're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. Midlife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition, and we will learn and execute living life with no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online/MLTM, Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community. In marriages, there's always 3 entities, right? There's me. In my case, there's me, there's my wife, and there's us. So there is an aspect that's us, but the us can't work if there's also not a me and also a she.
And so I don't put expectations on the us. I put expectations on me. I've made my case for what I expect out of him, but I don't expect it. If he doesn't come to the table, I can still have a marriage. If he doesn't come to the table, I can still be powerful. I can still be successful. I can still, because I have these skills, I can bring him to the table anytime I choose. And honestly, sometimes I don't choose it.
Right, sure.
And that's
Yeah,
power.
and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if I wake up and I'm going, man, I'm in a foul mood, I'm not feeling it today, I don't have to go to the table unless for some reason he wants me at the table, but then he'll come and say something. But I don't have to be at the table. And I think we lose focus on our power. We think in a relationship, our power or my power is our power,
Right.
and it's
No,
not.
that's
And so
right.
that's one of the things I've learned
Yeah.
is that we are walking simultaneously. Some are faster, some slower, some, sometimes willing, sometimes not willing. And it's how I hold my relationship that brings power.
Yeah. No, that's right. And how you hold yourself and the danger of, if I have to make somebody feel a certain way about me for me to be okay, then the whole thing can't work, right? That's codependency, right?
Right.
Instead of Jim
Right.
Detmerkel's
And
co-creative.
can I hold it? Can you hold your own power
Yeah.
in a relationship and be okay with
Yeah.
it? And some people really can't. They want somebody to need,
Right.
to be
Right.
needy and to be needed
Right.
and all of that. And, maybe it started out that way. I don't know, but it's not that way now.
If you hadn't taken this conflict resolution class, if you hadn't come to that realization of that I can be right and be wrong, or I can be right without making it better, what would the effect be on your life now? Like, where would your life be if you had never taken that class? If you'd never had that realization, where would your life be now?
For me, it's a God thing. I feel I was directed to it because I was there. I was ready to end it, and I thought to myself, but I believe in us.
Mm,
So you can have a lot of reasons to leave,
sure.
but you only need one to stay.
Hmm.
And my one thing was I believed in us so wholeheartedly that I thought, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that for us. I'm gonna learn that I can show up. Now I called it me showing up as a woman.
Hmm.
You'll know the woman in me, but you can know the person in me. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's how I showed up. Where would I be? I think I saw a flicker in that. I think we'd be one of two places. We'd either be divorced or we would be so embedded on destroying each other.
Yeah. Almost
is
worse than
really-
being divorced in a sense, still cohabitating, but
Yes.
destroying each other at the same time.
Yes. And he's really good because he doesn't have the institutional memory of us. He is really good at trying to destroy things. And so if you're in that kind of a relationship, these skills are exceptional because I can take the wind out of it and de-escalate that feeling just by the way I approach the situation.
Or you can escalate it by the way that you approach the situation, right?
Yes, I was really good at that if I wanted to.
Right. Okay. No, so that's it's a significant transition. If you would have been divorced or in, cohabitating hell, if you will, if you hadn't.
And liking it. I mean,
Yeah.
I could get to the point where I could like treating somebody really badly. It's the easy way out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it feels somehow there's the revenge, the term sweet revenge, right? It feels some sort in the short term, it's gratifying, even if it destroys what you care about more. I'm curious, looking back to when you had that realization, when you're in that conflict resolution class, looking back from the perspective, how many years ago was that now, Karleen?
2015.
Okay, so it's coming on 10 years ago, 9+ years ago. Is there something that you would tell your 9-year younger self? Is there some wisdom that you've distilled now that would make your transformation even more powerful or even more interesting that you would tell yourself at that point?
No, I don't think I'd want to tell her anything. You know why? Because that sucker punch was so strong that without it, and it was a self-inflicted one, that without that sucker punch, I would not have stopped to pay attention.
Right. You had to get a bucket of ice water in your face to really.
Yeah. Because the thing is that we do all we can to cushion ourselves from the blows.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that it didn't.
Right. That you had that blow so that it could come all the way through your defenses.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, I was in tears. When that happened, I was in tears. I had to go to the bathroom and I was just sobbing when I realized how insanely wrong I was.
How did that affect your other key relationships? You mentioned that you had 7 children, and I'm sure you have a lot of good friends and so forth too. How did this transition affect your other key relationships, Karleen?
They've made profound differences. I was sharing with you before, these skills have helped me heal every single relationship I've ever had. Every single one. And it's really in me. And understanding, like, okay, here's one. We haven't talked to my husband's family in 20 years at least.
Wow. At that time.
Wow. Yeah. And so I called up his mom and I said, you know what? I think would you like, and so I did it my own, would you like a relationship with your son? I know. And she was very hot and came in fat, came in hot and said, why are you doing this now? And I said, I think I'm more mature now and I've gotten wiser. And I think that you should have an opportunity at a relationship. And if I can facilitate that, I want to. And so with that, it instantly changed. Now, she did not instantly change towards me, which is fine.
Right. Because that's not why you were doing it. You weren't doing it.
That's not why I was doing it. And so because I was genuinely curious, because I took action on that, because I was willing to self-reflect on my own conflict with this and recognize my part in it, regardless of whose it was that initiated it, doesn't matter.
Where are we going to go from today, like you said earlier, right? Now that we're here, where are we going to go?
Yeah. So I connected them immediately. And now I don't know, they talk periodically, but every single relationship I've been able to go back and heal that relationship, have an opportunity to course correct. And if they don't want to, I have another person that's very close to me and they don't talk to me. And I've gone in multiple times trying to heal. But the thing is that it's healed because here's what I did. They have their choice.
That's right. Of course.
That's the freedom.
You're not going to force them to be in relationship with your active relationship.
Right. And the freedom in resolution is the freedom that you do and through your actions, words, all of that you gift to people to have the freedom and liberty to decide whether they want to be in one with you or don't want to be in one with you. And when you can get your mind straight on, it's about curiosity. It's about not solving the problem. It's about understanding between the bullet points. It's about the connection. Did I cause something to make that mother-in-law? Did I cause something to make this other person? In their view, absolutely.
Right.
In their view, absolutely. Yeah. It could be skewed. It could be a story that's grown. It could be a bunch of fabrications in there, but absolutely in their view. So if I'm willing to accept that they have a story in there, then I'm willing to grant them the liberty to reject me or accept me.
Right.
And when you do that, it's all over.
Right.
There is no longer harboring of ill will. Right. I don't harbor any ill will towards any of them. And I'm very close to some of these people that we've parted ways and they've just said, no, thank you. I'm not ready for it. So I've said, okay, well, when you are, I'm here. Yeah. If you ever want to just yell at me, I am so here for it. If you have a list of things that I can do to prove to you that I will, that I am ready to stand for this, I will give me the list and I will follow it. Just what do you need? And when you can go at a conflict and that's that way, now think about this. When I said at the beginning, so if I go after a mediation, I go, hey, just tell me what you need. Do you know that's exactly the line we use? Mm-hmm. Not all mediators, but a lot of mediators will go, what do you want to see at the end of it?
What's the desired outcome?
You take the list, right? And you see if we can find that in a hostage situation. What do you need?
Right.
At the end of this, in a crisis situation, how can we help you? Right. What do you need?
Right.
This is the thing that we miss. And these are the things that resolve. So, when you think about how many conflicts are not being resolved, it's because people aren't asking those pivotal questions.
Right.
First, understanding through exceptional learning, the curiosity, and then at the end going, okay, so is there something you need from me? How do you see this getting resolved? How would you like this to end? How do you see this working out? When you start asking those questions and you allow them in to the conversation, then you are gifting them the opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah, but I think the key there is what you call the exceptional learning, is not having any preconceived notions or any asking the questions with only certain acceptable answers, including that they have the choice that they don't want to have anything to do with you. And that's okay.
And can you walk away?
Yeah, that's okay.
Can you walk away full-hearted?
Yeah, full-hearted, open-hearted, right? And
Yeah.
letting that be. If you could give, with all of this experience that you've had, and it's been an amazing experience, and I really appreciate you sharing it so openly. If you could give one tool, Karleen, to our listeners, somebody that's in conflict or someone that's going through a big transition, if there's one tool that you would give them right now that they can start with right now without looking it up on the internet or doing anything different, just hit the pause button and start applying this in their life right now, what would that be? Would it be this curiosity piece, or is there something else?
It's the curiosity piece, and I can tell you this has immediate impact, but here's how you can use it immediately. If you want to see an instant, and I'm going to tell you one of my students, her name is Amanda. She was in this situation with her daughter, and her daughter was going through sexual orientation, wasn't sure what she wanted, doing all that stuff. And the mom, their family was very religious, and the mom was very dialed into this is the way it's right, and all this other stuff. We went through the curiosity thing, taught her the skills. She went home and applied it. And she didn't apply it to the hot topic, because that's not where you apply it.
It's too much at once, yeah.
It's too much at once, and plus you haven't fine-tuned the skill to know how to navigate through that. So you'll probably,
end up escalating it and damage the relationship more, yeah.
So you try it on something new. So she did. And she came away and saying, I thought it was too simple to work. And I did it, and it worked. And she said, and we are closer now than we have been in years. And so that was exceptional. So here's the exercise that you can do. You take an easy topic. It could be something as simple as, oh, you were going to go out and do this. How did it go? Or how was your day? Or you were giving a talk, or you had to go show somebody how to do something. How did it go? You ran into your friend. Any of those lighthearted, easier topics. And what you do is you ask questions for 15 minutes. Ask questions for 15 minutes. Like, really think about this. You will probably crash and burn after 5 minutes, because there's going to be several things that show up. Number one, you can't insert opinions.
Right.
You can't insert opinions with your face or with the noises from your, throat. Yeah. Or comments. You can't story swap. You can't start saying, yeah, I understand how you feel. It happened.
Right.
You can't start doing that. You can't insert any of your stuff, because it almost always changes their story.
Absolutely.
If you frown when somebody's saying something, they're going to look at you and go, maybe I'll cushion that story.
Right. Maybe they can't handle the truth.
Right. So that's Tom Cruise, right? You can't handle the truth.
That's right.
So anyway, if you do it for 15 minutes and all you do is ask questions, there's going to be several things that show up. Number one, you'll probably crash and burn after 5 because you don't have that many questions. What that's going to tell you, what it told me is, and when I tried to do this, is it told me you don't have enough of a dialogue for somebody else, else. You have enough of a dialogue to get them to engage so that you can engage, but you don't have enough of a dialogue to hold that space and let them talk. So you're going to find that out. You're going to find out you don't have enough questions. You're not curious enough. And you're going to find out if you can get yourself to go through it for 15 minutes, what you will find out is there are things that they're going to tell you that you never heard before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I've had people married 25 years. They went and applied it. They've come back with tears going, I had no idea. I've been married to this man for 25 years, and he told me things I've never heard before. I never knew his heart was broken over this. I never knew. And you'll find out those things. And when you do, that is your secret sauce. Not to use against them, to help edify the situation.
Right. That's beautiful. And I want to validate that story now. I'm sharing some of my story to yours, so I'm not following your 15 minutes. But I had my brother, cousin. He's a cousin that grew up in my house, exactly my age, from the minute he was born. We were born at the same time. And so super close the whole life. We're still super close. And I had him on the podcast and asking questions with no, like exceptional curiosity, exceptional learning, just asking questions. I learned things about him. We're 50 years together. And I learned things about him that I never knew. So it is a really powerful tool. I can vouch for what you're saying. And I think it's a great skill. And if I can listen more when I ask those questions, then it fills up the time without me having to ask as many questions either, to just listen to what comes in. Right. So no, that's beautiful. And it's something that anybody can do right now. And I can tell you that it will change the relationship from my own personal experience. So
nice. Yeah. And so when it did change your relationship, in what way?
I guess for us, I felt like before we had different times of it, but it was always, one of us was always like the big brother. One of us always had a little bit higher station. You know, it went through cycles. Normally I was the big brother, but sometimes there was a period of a few years where he was a big brother. And now it just felt like we're really coming back to your statement, like sort of partners. Right.
Wow.
So it's sort of like there was no need to have a certain posturing or any type of like, because if I'm the big brother or if he's the big brother, there's also a feeling that we have to show up a certain way to be the big brother. Like when you were the caretaker, right? You also have to show up in a different way, right? So I feel like it's just so much, like the relationship we have now is incredibly sweet, incredibly deep, but without being heavy, right? And so we can call each other and I can say, hey, I only have 2 minutes, but I just wanted to say hi. You know, and I don't have to worry about being upset, or I can call and say, hey, do you have time now? I want to talk for an hour, or whatever the case is. Right. So it's, it sort of blew me away when I learned things about him. And we had been hanging out a lot. It wasn't like we hadn't been hanging out like for 20 years. No, we've been hanging out a lot the last 4 or 5 years. Like, he lived with me during COVID. Right. And we've been hanging out a lot. And still, I learned things about him by doing that exceptional learning that I hadn't known my whole life. So, and things that were like important, like the way he felt when certain things happened. So, I can definitely vouch for that. So I have one last question for you. Where can people, you have some very interesting stories, a lot of wisdom. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more about you, Karleen?
If you go to my website, karleensavage.com, you can sign up on my wait list. Because I do courses, I do 4 courses a year.
Okay.
And I do, like, we're just launching one now for relationships.
Oh, cool.
But I do parenting course, I do a general course. But yeah, if you get on the wait list, you can.
So karleensavage.com. And we'll put that in the show notes as well, along with your full bio. So, well, thank you so much. It's been, as I said in the discovery call, it's been very learning for me, very very influential, and very I'm very curious, and I've learned a lot from you. So I know you've been giving a lot to our listeners too. So I really thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your wisdom, sharing the gifts God gave you with the rest of us. So thank you, Karleen.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online. and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.